2013, Detroit files bankruptcy, largest city in U.S. history. Pension funds collapse. Retirees lose 4.5% of benefits forever. 32,000 people affected. $3.5 billion in pension debt. 2025, Chicago, America's third largest city, 5 times bigger than Detroit, is following the exact same pattern. $56 billion in pension debt, not million, billion, for pension systems. Average funded ratio, 24%. That means for every dollar promised to retirees, the city has 24 cents. Worst funded major city pensions in America. And it just got worse. April 2025. Stock market turbulence. 7 days of chaos. Chicago's pension funds lost $1.58 billion. $938 million in 1 week. That's not history. That's last month. $56 billion debt. Third largest U.S. city. 2.7 billion people. This isn't Detroit. This is 5 Detroits. This isn't speculation. City financial reports. Equitable Institute data. April 2025 market loss calculations. Court cases already filed. I'm going to show you the numbers, the pattern, and why nobody's talking about the bomb ticking under America's third largest city. This is the story of how Chicago followed Detroit's playbook step by step, made every mistake bigger, and is now facing a pension apocalypse that could bankrupt the city within 5 years. Chicago isn't one pension system. It's 4 separate funds, all in crisis. First, Policeman's Annuity and Benefit Fund. Covers Chicago police officers. Funded ratio, 25%. Second, Fireman's Annuity and Benefit Fund. Covers Chicago firefighters. Same 25%, equally underwater. Third, Municipal Employees Annuity and Benefit Fund. Covers city workers. Funded ratio, 26%. Barely better. Fourth, Laborers and Retirement Board Employees Annuity. Covers manual laborers. Funded ratio, 27%. The healthiest of 4 disasters. 4 systems, all drowning. Combined, worst funded major city pensions in the nation. How did we find out how bad this is? 2024. Equitable Institute releases annual pension health report. Chicago's 4 systems rank dead last among all local pensions in America. April 2025, market crash. Instant transparency. When assets drop $1.58 billion in days, you can't hide the hole anymore. City Budget Office finally admits, this is a structural crisis. Who's affected? Active employees, 40,000 city workers contributing right now. Retirees, 60,000 already receiving benefits. Taxpayers, 2.7 million Chicago residents holding the bag. Bondholders, billions in municipal bonds circling the drain. The math is brutal. Total liabilities, $44.7 billion. Total assets, $10.8 billion. Shortfall, $33.9 billion. April 2025 market losses, $1.58 billion total, $938 million in just 7 days. But let me make this real for you. Meet a typical Chicago firefighter. Let's call him Tom. 62 years old, 32 years of service, planning to retire in 2026. He's expecting a $4,500 monthly pension. He earned it. He paid into it his entire career. His pension fund? 25% funded. If Chicago declares bankruptcy like Detroit, and Detroit only cut pensions 4.5%, but Chicago's hole is 10 times deeper. Realistic cut for Tom, 20 to 30%. That $4,500 becomes $3,150, maybe $3,600 if he's lucky. Try living on that in Chicago, and Tom has zero recourse. Can't sue, can't fix it. He just loses $1,000 plus per month. Forever? That's not hypothetical. That's what's coming. Now let me explain exactly how Chicago walked into this trap. It's a debt spiral in 5 steps that took 30 years to build. And step 5 is why Chicago legally cannot escape. Step 1. Make unsustainable promises, 1950s through 1990s. Politicians promised generous pensions to unions. It's easier than raising current wages. Problem? Future mayors will deal with it. They never do. Step 2. Underfund deliberately, 1990s through 2010s. City supposed to contribute X amount per year. Instead, contributes much less. Uses money for current budget needs. We'll catch up later, they say. Spoiler, they don't. Step 3. Assume impossible returns. 2000s to present. Pension funds assume they'll earn 7 to 7.5% annually every year forever. Reality? Markets are volatile. Returns miss targets consistently. Gap between fantasy and reality becomes massive debt. Step 4. The ramp, 2010s. Illinois legislature creates a pension payment ramp. Low payments now, massive payments later. Classic backloading. Interest compounds on the shortfall. Hole gets bigger every single year. Step 5. Constitutional trap, 2015. Illinois Supreme Court delivers the killing blow. Rules that pension benefits are protected by state constitution. Cannot reduce benefits, cannot touch them, even to avoid bankruptcy. City can only raise taxes or declare federal bankruptcy. Chicago is trapped in a cage of its own making. Let me show you exactly how this worked in practice. 2010. Chicago Fire Department Pension Fund needs $500 million contribution to stay healthy. City contributes only $200 million. Shortfall, $300 million. That $300 million doesn't vanish. It becomes debt. At 7% interest, it compounds. 2015. That original $300 million shortfall is now $420 million with accumulated interest. Plus 5 more years of new shortfalls. Plus market losses during that period. 2025. That original $300 million hole from 2010 is now part of a $3 billion plus disaster. Multiply this pattern across 4 separate funds over 15 years. Final result, $33.9 billion shortfall. Why 24% funded? Simple math. Promised benefits, the liabilities. $44.7 billion. Money actually in the funds, the assets. $10.8 billion. Funded ratio, $10.8 billion divided by $44.7 billion equals 24%. Translation: for every dollar promised to retirees, the city has 24 cents. There's 76 cents short on every dollar. Shortfall, $33.9 billion. Compare this to Detroit. Detroit 2013, pension shortfall $3.5 billion. City population 700,000. Result, bankruptcy filed. Chicago 2025, pension shortfall $33.9 billion. That's 10 times Detroit's whole. City population 2.7 million. That's 4 times Detroit's size. Result, tick tick tick. Don't take my word for any of this. Here are the receipts. Source 1. City of Chicago Fiscal Year 2023 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Total pension liabilities, $44.7 billion. Total pension assets, $10.8 billion. Unfunded liability, $33.9 billion. Direct quote from the city's own report. Significant, $33.9 billion aggregate unfunded liability. Source 2. Equable Institute State of Pensions 2024 report. Chicago's 4 systems identified as having the lowest funded ratios for local pension plans in the entire country. Direct quote, these 4 systems have the lowest funded ratios for local pension plans. Source 3. April 2025 market crash analysis. Equable Institute estimate, Chicago pensions lost $1.58 billion year-to-date in 2025. $938 million evaporated during the 7-day tariff crash in April. Quote, unprecedented market volatility resulting in billions of dollars in additional losses. Now the system-by-system breakdown. Policeman's Fund. Liabilities approximately $11 billion. Assets approximately $2.8 billion. Funded approximately 25%. Annual shortfall accelerating. Fireman's Fund. Liabilities approximately $7 billion. Assets approximately $1.8 billion. Funded approximately 25%. Requires growing contributions from city budget every year. Municipal employees. Liabilities approximately $16 billion. Assets approximately $4.2 billion. Funded approximately 26%. This is the largest system with the biggest hole in absolute dollars. Laborers Fund. Liabilities approximately $10 billion. Assets approximately $2 billion. Funded approximately 27%. Technically the best funded. Still critical condition. Total across all 4 funds, 24.2% average funded ratio. Dead last America. How much are taxpayers paying to keep this zombie alive? 2010. City pension contributions equaled approximately $500 million per year. 2023. City pension contributions jumped to $2.3 billion per year. That's a 360% increase in just 13 years. Property tax burden breakdown. Chicago property owners pay approximately $3.5 billion annually in property taxes. Approximately 80% of that goes to pensions and debt service. Only 20% pays for actual city services like police, fire, roads, schools, parks. Average Chicago homeowner pays $3,000 plus in annual property tax. $2,400 of that goes to pensions. Only $600 goes to the services you actually see and use. This isn't sudden. It's been a slow-motion train wreck for years. Let me show you the pattern. 2015. Moody's downgrades Chicago bonds to junk status. Reason explicitly cited: pension crisis. 2016. City forced to raise property taxes 13% in 1 year. Single biggest increase in decades. Reason: pension payments. 2022. Another property tax increase. Reason: still pensions, always pensions. 2023. Funded ratio officially drops to 24%. Equitable Institute issues warning: structural sustainability crisis. 2025. Market crash costs pensions another $1.58 billion. Funded ratio likely drop even further. Official data still pending. 5 separate warnings in 10 years. Nothing fundamentally changed. The hole just got deeper. Here's what really burns. If you manage your retirement account like this, you'd be broke, homeless, bankrupt, possibly prosecuted for fraud. Chicago politicians who systematically underfunded these pensions for decades. Rahm Emanuel, Mayor 2011 to 2019. Underfunded pensions his entire term. Raised property taxes 13%. Now he's U.S. Ambassador to Japan. Salary: $187,000 plus full federal pension. His pension? Fully funded by taxpayers. The firefighters he shortchanged for 8 years, 25% funded. Lori Lightfoot, Mayor 2019 to 2023. Crisis accelerated on her watch. Lost re-election, but not because of pensions. No legal consequences whatsoever. Brandon Johnson, current mayor, 2023 to present. He inherited this disaster. Promised no property tax increases during his campaign. Already broke that promise. Now he's facing the same impossible choices as his predecessors. The pattern is perfect. Politicians kick the can down the road. They move on to bigger jobs. They face zero consequences. Meanwhile, retirees' benefits hang by a thread. Taxpayers get crushed. So that's the proof. $56 billion in debt. System bleeding out. But here's what makes this truly terrifying. Detroit was $3.5 billion and it collapsed into bankruptcy. Chicago is 10 times bigger. What does that scale actually mean? Let me show you. $56 billion in total debt. That's $33.9 billion in pensions, plus approximately $22 billion in other municipal debt. Let me put that number in perspective you can actually grasp. $56 billion is more than the GDP of over 100 countries. It's equal to the entire annual budget of Michigan State. It's 6 times Chicago's total annual revenue of $9 billion. You could pay full 4-year college tuition for 1.4 million students with that money. The pension portion alone, that $33.9 billion shortfall, larger than Iceland's entire GDP, equal to 3.8 years of all Chicago tax revenue. $12,500 in debt for every single man, woman, and child in Chicago. Per capita debt load, $20,700 per Chicago resident. Per household, approximately $52,000. Annual cost, just to service this mess, $2.3 billion in pension contributions alone, and that barely covers the interest. Think this doesn't affect you? Think again. If you live in Chicago, your property taxes are going up. Already happened multiple times. Will happen again. City services are being cut. Already happening. Parks, libraries, road maintenance all suffering. Your home value is at risk. Who wants to buy property in a city circling bankruptcy? If you're a Chicago city worker, your future pension is in one of these 4 funds. 24% funded means 76% underfunded. When Chicago goes bankrupt and Detroit retirees lost 4.5% of benefits, You could lose 20, 25, maybe 30%. Your retirement security is an illusion. If you're already a Chicago retiree, you're receiving pension payments right now from these funds. Bankruptcy will cut them. Healthcare benefits, those disappear first, always do. If you own Chicago municipal bonds, $22 billion in bonds outstanding, already rated jump by Moody's, bankruptcy means significant losses, maybe 30, 40 cents on the dollar. If you live anywhere else in Illinois, the state might be forced to bail out Chicago. State constitution might require it. Your taxes across the entire state could skyrocket to save Chicago. This affects millions of people, not thousands, millions. So why do more people know about this? Media focuses on crime statistics, political scandals, weather, sports. Pension math is boring. Reports get buried in 300-page city budget documents. Politicians certainly don't advertise their failures. Mainstream Chicago news, maybe 1 or 2 pension stories per year, buried in the business section. You literally had to find this video to learn that your city is about to implode financially. That should terrify you. We've seen this exact movie before. Detroit 2013, $3.5 billion pension shortfall. Chicago's is $33.9 billion. Detroit had 700,000 people. Chicago has 2.7 million. Detroit had decades of deliberate underfunding. Chicago same. Detroit had constitutional protection of pensions. Chicago same. Detroit's crisis was revealed by market crash. Chicago same playbook. Detroit filed Chapter 9 bankruptcy in July 2013. The outcome in Detroit, pensions cut 4.5%. All retiree health care eliminated completely. Retirees are still suffering in 2025, 12 years later. City services were decimated and still haven't recovered. Chicago is following the exact same script, just 10 times bigger scale, which means 10 times worse outcome. So here's the question everyone asks: why can't they just fix it? Why can't Chicago cut the benefits, restructure, solve this? Here's why. The constitutional trap. 2015, Illinois Supreme Court delivers a landmark ruling. Article XII. Section V of the Illinois Constitution states that pension benefits create an enforceable contractual relationship. Benefits shall not be diminished or impaired. Translation: it is illegal to cut pension benefits, even to avoid bankruptcy, even to save the city. This isn't a suggestion. This is state constitutional law. It's ironclad. So what are Chicago's actual options? Option 1. Cut benefits to match available funding. Status: illegal. State Supreme Court explicitly blocked this in 2015. Option 2. Raise revenue massively through taxes. Problem: tax base is already fleeing Chicago. Raise taxes more people leave, death spiral accelerates. Option 3. Declare federal bankruptcy. Federal bankruptcy court might override state constitutional protections. Detroit chose this option. Chicago is desperately avoiding it. For now. There is no option 4. That's it. That's the menu. What happened to the politicians who actually caused this 30-year disaster? Richard M. Daley, mayor of Chicago 1989 to 2011, systematically underfunded pensions for 22 consecutive years. Retired comfortably. He's now 83 years old, living well, zero consequences, zero accountability. Rahm Emanuel, mayor 2011 to 2019, continued the underfunding. Raised property taxes 13% in 1 year. Residents furious. He moved on. Now he's U.S. ambassador to Japan. He was promoted, not punished. His federal pension is fully funded. The Chicago firefighters he starved, 25% funded. Lori Lightfoot, mayor 2019 to 2023. The crisis measurably worsened during her administration. She lost re-election, but pension crisis wasn't even a top campaign issue. No legal consequences of any kind. Brandon Johnson, current mayor, 2023 to present. He inherited this nightmare from his predecessors. He promised during his campaign, no property tax increases. He's already broken that promise. Now he faces the exact same impossible math. Cut benefits, illegal. Raise taxes, political suicide. Bankruptcy, career ending. The pattern is flawless. Politicians kick can down road, serve their terms, move on to better positions, face zero consequences, zero accountability, zero punishment. Why is there no real reform? Why does this system persist? Union power. Police union in Chicago. Powerful political force. Massive campaign contributor. Fire union, same story. Municipal Workers Union, ASDME, one of the largest unions in America. Campaign contributions flow to both Democrats and Republicans. The numbers tell the story. 40,000 active city employees equals 40,000 voters. 60,000 current retirees equals 60,000 voters. Add their families, and you're looking at over 200,000 votes tied to pension system. In a close Chicago election, that's the entire margin of victory. Any politician who seriously proposes benefit cuts loses election immediately. Any politician who raises taxes enough to actually close the gap also loses election. They're trapped between mathematics and politics. Mathematics will win eventually. Mathematics always wins. Politicians are just hoping the collapse happens after they're safely out of office. Why doesn't local media cover this crisis every single day? Several reasons. It's a boring topic compared to crime, corruption, sports. It requires financial literacy most reporters don't have. Advertisers don't want doom content driving away customers. Politicians are key news sources. Don't bite the hand that feeds you quotes. Result: maybe 2 to 3 pension stories per year. Buried in business section, forgotten immediately. National media? Chicago isn't Detroit yet, so it's not a story yet. When Chicago actually files bankruptcy, then it becomes massive national news. Too late to prevent anything. Perfect for ratings, though. Have they tried any reforms at all? Yes, fake ones. 2010. Illinois legislature creates Tier 2 pensions. New employees hired after 2010 get significantly smaller benefits. This was supposed to save money long-term. Problem: does absolutely nothing about the existing $33.9 billion hole. It only helps in 30 or 40 years when those Tier 2 employees retire. Current crisis? Completely unaffected. 2016. Major property tax increase. Supposed to start closing the gap. The gap kept growing anyway. Math didn't change. 2024. Mayor Johnson promises structural solutions. No specifics provided. Ever are. Math still doesn't change. Real reform would mean cutting benefits. That's illegal under state constitution. So they do theatrical fake reforms. Minor tweaks around the edges. Press releases. The crisis continues uninterrupted. So where are we right now in April 2025? Current situation. Market volatility in April cost the pension funds $1.58 billion in losses. $938 million vanished in a single week during the tariff crisis. Funded ratio has likely dropped below 24%. Official updated data is still pending. City is still somehow making $2.3 billion plus in annual contributions. Property taxes are at all-time record highs. Public anger is growing but unfocused. Recent developments worth noting. February 2025. Equable Institute releases their annual report. Chicago pensions officially ranked worst in the entire nation. Report warns of sustainability crisis. March 2025. Mayor Johnson releases budget proposal. Needs an additional $223 million for pensions this year, on top of the existing $2.3 billion. He's considering yet another property tax increase. Public backlash is intensifying. April 2025. Market crash hits. Pension losses mount. No relief anywhere on the horizon. Here's why it's getting worse instead of better. Every year the city contributes billions. Sounds good, right? But interest on that $33.9 billion debt at 7% assumed return equals $2.4 billion per year. The city's contributions barely cover the interest on the debt. They're not paying down the principal. Principal keeps growing. Add market losses on top. Add benefit payments to 60,000 current retirees on top of that. This is textbook debt paralysis. Not bankrupt yet, but can't escape, stuck in trap, making massive payments forever. Hole getting bigger despite the payments. How will you know when it's about to blow? Watch for these specific triggers. Trigger 1. Bond market panic. If Chicago municipal bond yields suddenly spike above 8 to 10%, that means bond market believes bankruptcy is imminent. At that point, city won't be able to borrow money for anything. Cash crisis follows within months. Trigger 2. Mass exodus accelerates. If population decline speeds up dramatically. Fewer taxpayers means crisis accelerates exponentially. Chicago is currently losing approximately 20,000 residents per year. If that hits 50,000 or 100,000 per year, game over? Trigger 3. Visible service collapse. If police and fire response times crater. If garbage isn't being picked up. If streetlights stay dark. If potholes don't get filled. That means there's no money left for basic services. Everything is going to pensions and debt. Trigger 4. Pension fund insolvency. If any one of the 4 funds completely runs out of assets. It's zero. Can't make monthly benefit payments to retirees. City would have to pay benefits directly from operating budget. Creates immediate cash crisis. Probably triggers bankruptcy filing within weeks. Trigger 5. State intervention. If Illinois state government tries to take over Chicago's finances. Creates massive constitutional crisis. State this city. Probably triggers bankruptcy to avoid state takeover. Any one of these 5 triggers means the countdown has started. Multiple triggers at once, bankruptcy within months. What would actually force Chicago to file for bankruptcy? Scenario 1. Pension fund runs completely dry. Most likely scenario, one of the 4 funds it's $0. Can't pay monthly benefits to retirees. Retirees sue immediately. City can't cover payments from operating budget. Federal Chapter 9 bankruptcy becomes the only legal option. Scenario 2. Bond market closes completely. Also very likely. Chicago can't sell bonds at any price. Can't borrow for basic operations. Cash crisis within months. Bankruptcy or state takeover become only choices. Scenario 3. Tax base collapse. Medium-term threat. Businesses leave in mass numbers. Residents flee. Tax revenue craters. City can't pay even current bills. Bankruptcy becomes inevitable. Scenario 4. Another major market crash. Wild card scenario, like 2008 financial crisis or April 2025, but much worse. Pension funds lose 30 to 40% of assets in crash. Funded ratio drops to 15% or lower. System breaks immediately. No way to recover. Timeline estimates. Optimistic scenario, 5 years until bankruptcy. Realistic scenario, 2 to 3 years. Pessimistic scenario, next recession triggers it immediately. What are people who truly understand this doing right now? Wealthy Chicago residents, quietly moving to suburbs or other states. Corporations, relocating headquarters out of Chicago. Boeing left in 2022. Citadel left in 2022. More coming. Bond investors, actively dumping Chicago municipal bonds. Pension consultants, quietly advising their clients to prepare for cuts. Financial press, finally starting to pay attention. They're not waiting around to see what happens. They'd already know. So that's Chicago's $56 billion pension crisis. 4 separate funds, 24% funded. Worst funded major city pensions in America. Following Detroit's pattern exactly, but 10 times bigger scale. Constitutional trap means legally cannot cut benefits. Tax base is fleeing. Costs accelerating every year. Market crashes making everything worse. Politicians kick this can down the road for 30 years. The mathematics finally caught up. But this isn't just about Chicago. This is about what happens when politicians promise more than the system can possibly deliver. What happens when mathematics meets politics? What happens when you legally can't cut benefits, can't raise taxes enough to cover the gap, and can't grow your way out of the hole? Illinois has the same problem at state level. $139 billion in state pension debt. Connecticut has it. New Jersey has it. Multiple California cities have it. There are hundreds of pension funds across America that are Chicago. Just smaller scale, just a few years behind. The pension crisis is slow-motion financial collapse playing out across the country. Chicago just happens to be furthest along the path. This affects 2.7 million Chicago residents directly, 60,000 current retirees whose benefits are at risk, 40,000 active workers whose future is evaporating, millions of Illinois residents if the state is forced into a bailout, every city with underfunded pensions watching to see what precedent Chicago sets. When Chicago goes, and it's when not if, it proves that pensions can catastrophically fail even in major U.S. cities. Detroit was just Detroit. People dismissed it as a Rust Belt anomaly. Unique circumstances. Could never happen to a real major city. Chicago is America's 3rd largest city. That's completely different. That's a game changer. Now that you know what the media isn't telling you, you can't unsee this. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? If you live in Chicago, check which pension fund covers your situation. Google the fund name plus funded ratio. Below 30%? Start planning your exit strategy seriously. This isn't fear-mongering. This is mathematics. If you live anywhere else, Google your city name plus pension funded ratio right now. Below 60%? You're on a watch list. Below 40%? You're Chicago, just 5 years behind on the same path. I'm actively tracking 47 cities in various stages of pension crisis. Illinois state pensions, Connecticut, New Jersey, multiple California cities. Chicago is just the first domino, just the most visible, just the closest to collapse. Next video. Which major American city goes bankrupt next? I've analyzed the data. I've identified the warning signs. You need to see it before it happens. Subscribe right now, because when your city's pension fund hits 20% funded, it's already too late to prepare. The time to know is now. The time to act is now. The pension apocalypse isn't coming. It's already here. Chicago is just the preview. Are you ready?